The courtroom was dark, the air thick and still. The only sound was the low, steady hum of a projector. On the large screen, an image flickered to life. It was abstract, alien. A ghostly silhouette of a human form, glowing a dull, angry orange against a black background. It was a still frame from a video, date, and time stamped in the corner. 4:03 a.m. "This," said the prosecutor, his voice slicing through the silence, "is the moment of the murder." He pointed a laser. The red dot hovered over the glowing orange shape. "This is Thorne Doyle." And this, the laser moved to a second, taller orange shape, this one wielding a long object, "is the defendant." Mr. Gino Marchetti. A nervous murmur rippled through the gallery. "But how can we be sure?" the prosecutor asked, his voice dripping with rhetorical confidence. "It's 4 a.m. It's pitch black in that alley. The camera can't see faces. No, this camera, this state-of-the-art thermal imaging camera, sees something better than a face. It sees heat. It sees the truth." He clicked a button. "This is the image as it was recorded. Now, let's look at the data. Let's enhance." The image changed. The colors inverted. Now the alley was a cold purple, but the two figures were electric. "Mr. Marchetti," the prosecutor continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, was in a rage. He was desperate, but in that darkness he forgot one crucial detail. He forgot about his disease. The laser pointer moved again, settling on the arm of the attacker. The arm wielding the weapon. On the thermal image, it was not orange. It was not red. It was a deep, cold, terrifying blue. "This is the thermal fingerprint of the killer," the prosecutor said, his voice rising to a crescendo. "A cold arm. An arm with almost no heat signature." We asked, "What could cause this? A prosthetic? No. A ghost? No. The truth, ladies and gentlemen, is far simpler. It is a medical condition." He clicked to his final slide. It was a page from a medical textbook. "It is called Raynaud's syndrome, a severe circulatory disorder that restricts blood flow, causing the extremities to become, for all intents and purposes, cold. As cold as a corpse. And who in this entire city has a documented severe case of Raynaud's syndrome affecting his right arm? Who has the motive? Who has the opportunity? Whose fingerprints were found on the murder weapon?" The prosecutor turned, slowly, and pointed. Not with the laser, but with his own, warm, living hand. "He does. The defendant, Mr. Gino Marchetti. The North End of Boston doesn't change. It just gets older." And no place was a better testament to that than Gino's bakery. The gold leaf on the front window, Marchetti and Sons, it was peeling, and Gino hadn't had a son in 30 years, but the smell was eternal. It was a potent, intoxicating cloud of anise, almond, and slow-proofed sourdough that anchored the entire block. Inside, Gino Marchetti, at 68, was in a foul mood. Which was, for him, a normal state of being. "No, no, no," he bellowed, his voice a gravel pit. He slapped a baking sheet on the flour-dusted wooden table. "You're killing it. You're punching it. This is bread, kid, not a boxing bag. You gotta fold it, seduce it, show it some respect." The kid, a culinary intern who was at least 25, winced. Sorry, Mr. Marchetti. You just nothing. You just made a sponge, not bread." "A sponge? My wife, my Maria. She wouldn't use this to wash the floor. Again, from the beginning. And if I see you look at that phone, I'm gonna bake it." Gino was a tyrant. A baker king in a flower-white apron. He was also, by every metric, a failure. People wanted kale smoothies and gluten-free bread that tasted like sad air. They didn't want real bread. They didn't want his art. The bills were piled high on the desk in his tiny, cramped office. right next to the third, and final, offer from the Artisan Collective Restaurant Group to buy him out. It was an insulting offer. An offer that screamed, "We know you're dying. Just die already." He washed his hands, the hot water doing nothing for the strange, deep chill in his right arm. It was white, the color of old bone. His dead hand, he called it. Raynaud's. A cruel joke for a man who worked with his hands. He dried it, the towel rough, trying to bring some life back into the fingers. He climbed the narrow, creaking stairs above the bakery. The apartment was small, but it was clean. It smelled of yeast, old photographs, and, faintly, of ozone. Puff hiss. It was the sound that governed his life. The sound of the oxygen concentrator in the corner. Maria, his Maria, was in her armchair by the window, a thick wool blanket over her lap, a thin plastic tube across her face. She was 67, but the pulmonary fibrosis had aged her into something ancient and fragile. "You're yelling again, Gino," she whispered, her voice a dry rustle. "I'm not yelling. I'm instructing." Gino softened instantly, the tyrant vanishing. He knelt by her chair, taking her hand. It was warm. His was cold. "He's a good boy. He's just fast. You're slow." "Slow is good," Gino grumbled, chafing his own cold fingers. "Slow is bread. Fast is a sponge." She smiled, a weak, beautiful movement. Her eyes were on the wall, at a faded, sun-bleached photograph taken 40 years ago. A small, white house on a cliff. The Mediterranean, an impossible shimmering blue behind it. "Sicily," she whispered. "I know, cara mia. I can still smell the lemons," she said, her eyes closing. "The sea. Just one more time, Gino. Before I get too tired." He squeezed her hand. "I'm working on it. The broker, he's got a new offer." He was lying. The broker had called that morning. The Artisan Collective was the only offer. And it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough to pay their debts and pay for the medical flight to get her to Italy. He was short. He was desperately, terrifyingly short. "I'm tired, Gino," she whispered, her eyes fluttering. "Rest," he said, kissing her forehead. "I'll handle it. I always handle it." He walked back down to the bakery, his heart a cold, heavy stone in his chest. He looked at the insulting offer on his desk. He looked at the red-stamped final notice from the gas company. And then the bell above the door tinkled, bringing in a gust of cold air and a man who smelled of cheap cologne and regulation. "Mr. Marchetti." The man smiled. His name was Doyle. He was the new city health inspector. And he was, Gino knew, a weasel. "Doyle." Gino grunted. "Just a routine follow-up," Doyle said, his eyes scanning the immaculate 4 a.m. scrubbed bakery. He was the worst kind of inspector. The kind who looked for problems. "It's all clean, like always." "I'm sure it is," Doyle said, walking behind the counter, his clipboard at the ready. He ran a finger under the lip of the stainless steel counter. He looked at it. A tiny crumb of flour. He sighed. A theatrical, sad sound. Gino, what is this?" "It's flour. I'm a baker. It's a harboring environment for pests," Doyle said, ticking a box. "And the walk-in. The temperature log. You're 2 degrees. 2. Above code." The door was just open. The kid. "I can't pass this, Gino," Doyle said, shaking his head. "I'm afraid I have to shut you down." "You?" "What?" Gino felt the blood drain from his face, leaving his right arm feeling even colder. 48-hour mandatory closure, pending a deep clean and recalibration. "It's the law." Doyle smiled. A thin, greasy smile. "Of course. These things can be reevaluated. Expedited. Even. For a friend." Gino stared at him. The smell of lemons, the puff hiss of the oxygen, the final, insulting offer. It all swirled into a vortex of cold, pure rage. "Get out," Gino whispered. "I'm just saying, the Artisan Collective. They seem to pass their inspections. It's almost like, get out," Gino said, his voice rising, his cold white hand clenching into a fist. "As you wish." Doyle placed the bright red closed sticker on the front door. "A shame, really. I hear your wife isn't well. It would be a tragedy if you couldn't sell." Doyle left. Gino stood in the center of his bakery. His bakery. His father's bakery. And looked at the red sticker. It was a death sentence. It was the end of Maria's last trip. It was the end of everything. He didn't yell. He didn't break anything. He just stood there, his right arm aching with a cold so deep it felt like it was coming from the bone. At 4:03 a.m., the alley behind Gino's was a pocket of absolute darkness. At 4:05 a.m., Gino Marchetti came out the back door, his hands dusted with the first batch of flour. He was supposed to be closed, but he was a baker. He baked. It was all he knew how to do. He smelled it first. The coppery tang of blood, cutting through the sweet scent of yeast. He saw the shape first. A man, crumpled like a discarded bag of flour. He saw the face last. Inspector Doyle. His eyes open, staring, lifeless. And next to him, lying in a dark, spreading pool, was his Raynaud, his mother's rolling pin, the one made of Tuscan olive wood, the one he'd used for 40 years. It was covered in blood. Gino's mind did not process this. It simply broke. He stumbled forward. My pin," he whispered. He bent down, his cold, numb fingers closing around the familiar wood. It was sticky. He lifted it. His prints. He heard a sound, a clatter, a garbage can lid, 2 alleys over. Panic, cold and sharp, replaced the fog. He was a 6'8" man, with a dead inspector at his feet, holding the murder weapon. He dropped the rolling pin. It clattered, loud in the silence. He scrambled backward, slipping, his floury hand catching on the brick wall. He bolted. Back inside. Up the stairs. He scrubbed his hands, but he couldn't get the feel of it off. He sat in the dark, in the chair across from his sleeping wife. The puff hiss of her breath counting down the seconds until the sirens came. Marcus Thorne, 66, hated retirement. He hated the quiet. He hated the sterile, beige walls of his condo. Most of all, he hated his own reputation. He had been a pioneer. A forensic imaging engineer. He was the man who could pull a license plate from a single, blurry pixel. He was the man who could enhance a shadow and find a face. He had been a god in his field. Until the Miller case, he kept the file. A constant, flagellating reminder. The Miller case. 12 years. Wrongful conviction. His enhancement. His expert analysis of a grainy convenience store video had been wrong. He had seen what he wanted to see. He had seen a guilty man. And he had created him. The man had been exonerated. But Marcus's career was over. He retired in shame. A man, haunted by the pixels he had betrayed. He was watching the morning news, nursing a cup of coffee, when Gino's story came on. He saw the grainy, abstract thermal image. He heard the anchor say, "An infallible thermal fingerprint." Marcus flinched. He knew that camera. He knew the software. He had been on the city council advisory board that recommended the system. "It's the future," he had told them. "It sees the truth in the dark." And now, his truth machine was about to send another man to prison. Raynaud's. Marcus muttered to himself. What a convenient, tidy little narrative. He felt the old, familiar itch. The pull of the puzzle. But this was more. This was his system. If it was right, so be it. But if it was wrong, if he was wrong, again, he made a call. He still had a few friends on the force, old-timers who remembered him as a genius, not a disgrace. Yeah, Marcus, I can get you the file. Why? The case is a lock. Just humor an old man, Marcus said. I want to see the video. The whole video. Not the press release photo. The meeting at the jail was grim. Gino was a ghost. His fire gone. Maria was in the hospital. She had collapsed when she heard the news. Her lungs, fragile as they were, succumbing to the shock. Gino's daughter, Angelina, was splitting her time between the hospital and her father's holding cell. She's not eating, Papa, Angelina said, her voice thin, her eyes red. She's waiting for you. I'm not coming, Ange, Gino said, his voice a dead monotone. They're gonna put me away, Mr. Marchetti. A new voice. Gino looked up. A man, about his own age, with tired eyes and a rumpled suit, was standing with his lawyer. I'm Marcus Thorne. I'm a forensic imaging specialist. I'm consulting on your case. A specialist, Gino spat. Great. Here to tell me I'm guilty. I'm here, Marcus said, sitting down. To find out if a camera is lying. He looked Gino square in the eye. My enhancement sent an innocent man to prison once. I will not let it happen again. I need the truth. Your lawyer is useless. The DA has a perfect story. Now, you tell me your story, and don't leave out a single stupid detail. Gino, for the first time, saw a flicker of something other than pity. He saw obsession. He told him everything. The alley, the smell, the body, the rolling pin, and, wait, Marcus said, his pen hovering over his notepad. Go back. You heard something. Yeah. Just before I ran. A clatter. Like a garbage can. No, before that. When you first came out. When you found the body, Gino thought, his brow furrowed, trying to re-enter that dark, terrible moment. It was quiet. No, not quiet. I heard a sound. A hiss. Like a tire letting out air. A ps sound from the other end of the alley. Marcus Thorne stopped writing. He looked up, his eyes suddenly, intensely, alive. A hiss, Marcus whispered. Yeah, a hiss. What? Mr. Marchetti, Marcus said, a cold electric thrill running up his spine. You just might have saved your own life. A hiss. What hisses and gets cold? He thought of his engineering days. Adiabatic expansion. Joule-Thomson effect. When a compressed gas expands, it gets cold. Violently cold. A CO2 fire extinguisher. A can of compressed air. A canister of nitrous oxide. Or, Marcus was back in his apartment, his computer now linked to the city's servers. He was analyzing the real estate. Who wanted Gino's building? The Artisan Collective. CEO, Jonathan Slade. Marcus ran a search. Jonathan Slade. Artisan Collective. Kitchen. He found it. A Fawning magazine article about Slade's flagship restaurant in New York. A temple of molecular gastronomy. The article gushed. There were pictures of Slade, in a chef's coat, holding a parent of tweezers over a piece of fish. And, in the background, the kitchen, and on the counter, a large, metal, steaming canister. A dewar, of liquid nitrogen, used to flash freeze herbs and make instant ice cream. Marcus read. And, to make a human arm. Cold. He turned back to the thermal video file. The one the DA hadn't bothered to look at. The DA had his still. He had his photograph. You're not looking, you idiot. Marcus muttered, his fingers flying over the keyboard. You're not looking at the rate of change. He isolated the cold arm of the attacker. He ran a temporal analysis, tracking the temperature of that single arm. Frame by frame. Over the 30 seconds it was visible. A graph appeared on his screen. There, he whispered. There you are. The graph showed the arm warming up. But it was as a slow, steady line. It was a steep, frantic climb. The body was fighting back, pouring hot, living blood into a limb that had been artificially, superficially, frozen. Flash reperfusion. Marcus breathed. The arm was warming at a rate of 10 degrees per minute. He grabbed his own thermal camera, a small, handheld device he kept from his old job. He went to his kitchen. He grabbed a can of compressed air for cleaning keyboards. He turned it upside down and sprayed the liquid propellant over his own arm. It stung, a biting, chemical cold. He pointed his camera at his arm. It was blue. A perfect, cold blue. He timed it. He watched the graph on his own camera. The rewarming. The flash perfusion. The signature was identical. Now, let's see Gino, he said. He got George Allister, the now believing lawyer, to get him into the jail. He filmed Gino's arm. It was, as advertised, a pale, cold blue. But it was a different blue, a more mottled blue, and when he watched the rewarming, it barely moved. 0.5 degrees per minute. A sick, slow, chronic cold. I've got you, Marcus said, his heart pounding. I've got you. You son of a bitch. The courtroom was packed. Jonathan Slade, CEO of the Artisan Collective, was in the front row, a picture of civic concern. The DA was giving his closing argument. The blue arm photo on the screen. A silent, damning indictment. This photo, the DA said, is the truth. It is science. It does not lie. Gino Marchetti's own body. Confessed to this crime. The defense, George Allister said, standing up, would like to call a rebuttal expert. Dr. Marcus Thorne. Marcus walked to the stand. He was no longer a rumpled retiree. He was the expert. He was the god of pixels. Dr. Thorne, George asked, you have seen this photograph. Do you agree with the prosecution's analysis? No, Marcus said, his voice clear. I do not. Because the prosecution made a critical mistake. They brought a photograph to a movie fight. Explain, George said. Marcus turned to the jury. The prosecution is right. That arm is cold. But they didn't ask why it was cold, or how it was cold. They just saw it. And they saw Mr. Marchetti, and they stopped. They stopped doing their jobs. They fell in love with a neat, simple story. Your Honor, he said, I ask the court to play the full video file. Evidence 14A. The video played. The abstract blobs of heat. The attack. Now, Marcus said. Let's apply a temporal thermal analysis. We're going to track the temperature of the attacker's arm, second by second. A graph began to draw itself on the screen. A steep, upward-sloping line. This, Marcus said, is not a disease. This is a panic. This is the body's healthy response to an artificial, sudden, and intense cold. An arm dipped in liquid nitrogen, perhaps, or sprayed with a chemical coolant. This arm is warming up at a rate of 10.4 degrees per minute. The jury was confused. The DA was on his feet. Objection. This is speculation. It's theory. It is data, Marcus snapped. And now, I will show you real Raynaud's. He played his own video of Gino's arm. He ran the same analysis. A new line appeared on the graph. It was almost flat. This, Marcus said, is Mr. Marchetti. His rewarming rate is 0.5 degrees per minute. His body is sick. It can't warm itself up. He turned to the jury, his voice ringing with the authority he had lost for so long. The arms are not the same. The signatures are not the same. The killer in that video is a healthy man, faking a disease. He is a healthy man, who happens to know about molecular gastronomy and liquid nitrogen. Marcus turned, his eyes landing, for the first time, on the front row. A man like Mr. Jonathan Slade. Slade's face was white. He didn't bolt. He didn't move. He just stared at Marcus, his mask of civic concern having evaporated, revealing the cold, reptilian killer underneath. "And one more thing," Marcus said, his voice dropping. "Mr. Marchetti." He heard a hiss, the sound of a compressed gas canister, being used to create an alibi. The courtroom was silent. The DA, his perfect case in ashes, slowly sat down. The release was immediate. The case against Jonathan Slade was built on Marcus's data, and on the testimony of a panicked pastry chef who admitted Slade had ordered him to procure a 50-liter dewar of liquid nitrogen for an experiment 3 days before the murder. Slade had silenced Doyle, and had, in the process, created the perfect fall guy in Gino. Gino didn't wait for the new trial. He didn't go to the press. He ran. He ran from the courthouse, a free man, his daughter Angelina weeping at his side. He ran to the hospital. He burst into room 304. The puff hiss of the oxygen machine was the only sound. Maria was in the bed, not the chair. She was asleep. She looked smaller, like a bird. "Maria," Gino whispered, his voice thick. His hands, one cold, one warm, touching her face. "Maria, I'm here." Sono qui. Her eyes, frail as butterfly wings, fluttered open. She saw him. A slow, weak, magnificent smile spread across her face. "Sicily, Gino," she whispered. "Yes, cara mia." He wept, kneeling by her bed, burying his face in the thin hospital blanket. "Yes. We're going. I'm selling the shop. We're going." "No, Gino," she said, her voice impossibly gentle. She put her thin hand on his head. We're already there." She closed her eyes. The puff hiss continued, but her breathing, for the first time in a year, was slow and steady and deep. The epilogue was written by Angelina a month later. She sat in the passenger seat of an old car, on a ferry, the water a deep, impossible blue. She was holding her phone, on a video call. On the screen was Marcus Thorne, back in his condo. He looked peaceful. "We're here, Marcus," Angelina said, her voice full of joy. She flipped the camera. Gino was at the railing of the ferry, his face to the wind. He was holding a small, silver urn. He looked at the camera, his eyes red, but his face strong. He raised the urn in a silent salute to Marcus. "For Maria," Gino said, his voice carried on the wind. Marcus nodded, a small, sad, proud smile on his face. He watched as Gino Marchetti, a free man, finally brought his wife home. He ended the call, and for the first time since the Miller case, Marcus Thorne looked at the pixels on his screen, and he knew, with absolute certainty, that he had finally gotten the story right.
If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to support the channel so we can create more videos. Thank you, everyone.